Hi, guys. How are you? This is amazing. Thank you, General Flynn, for having everybody here. This is awesome. Our journey started with General Flynn in April of this last year. Me and Emily went down to Tulsa to the Clay Clark's Reawakening tour. We, by the grace of God, got there because when Emily called, like a month, I think it was a month before that, they said, no, we're sold out. We're all sold out and overflow, everything. I'm like, okay. So we prayed on it. We said, hey, if we're meant to be here, let us be here. By the grace of God, 2 weeks before that event, a guy's wife or his mother unfortunately got sick. So he canceled his 2 tickets. And his name is Kevin Lau. And we cannot thank that man enough because it was him that started our journey. We got there, and by the grace of God, Emily found Dr. Meehan's wife. She started talking to Dr. Meehan's wife, telling her about how our little girls were abused by our school systems because they were forced to wear masks every day. Olivia, come here, baby. This is my little girl, Olivia, and her story is the one I told in Tulsa. And because of me telling her story in Tulsa, General Flynn actually held up her sign and made her famous because he held up her sign while he was speaking. Because Olivia suffered a staph infection 4 different times because of these mask mandates that the school was forcing to put on our children. We had a medical exemption turned into her school because the doctor said if we did not take this mask off of her, they were afraid that the infection was going to get into her lungs and probably cause more problems than COVID ever has or ever will for her. When we did that, the school then segregated my child. They literally put her on one side of the room versus the other. Mind you, she was 5 years old and in kindergarten. This is her first year in kindergarten. She was so excited to go. She wanted to be in big school. She always called it big school. She's like, Mom, I can't wait to go to big school. And I'm like, okay, and it tore at my heart to send them to school with a mask on. I really did not want to do it. But she wanted to. She was excited. And then they segregated her. And like I said, this was heartbreaking. My husband and I worked tirelessly with the school, trying to do anything, come up with any kind of solutions to get her involved with the kids, because when they segregated her because she couldn't wear the same mask, it started to have an effect on her schooling. She started withdrawing from the family. She started withdrawing from the school. She started failing basically, kindergarten. So in January, we turned her medical exemption in on December 7th. On January 17th, the school called us and asked us to amend her medical exemption to wear a mask again so she can be in close proximities to the other students because she was being segregated. She couldn't play with anybody at recess. She couldn't play with anybody at lunch. She couldn't sit by anybody. She was literally by herself, forced to sit by herself. And the worst part of it all is when she would come home. I'm a mom of 7. We don't have a quiet time in my house. It's not a thing. If it's quiet in my house, you better be getting up and seeing what these kids are doing because they're getting into something. So she would come home every day after school and she'd go up to her room and she'd just sit in her room. And one day I'm like, Olivia, why are you sitting up here by yourself? Come downstairs. And she starts tearing up and I'm like, Olivia, what's wrong? She's like, Mom, I don't want to come downstairs. I'm like, why, honey? She's like, because my teachers and my friends say because I can't wear the same mask as them that I'm going to give you COVID and you're going to die. This is the kind of stuff that our children are being told in school by our teachers, by their peers. They're literally being indoctrinated to be fearful of a virus with a 99% survival rate in kids. Because of this, Emily and I decided, you know what? Enough is enough. Her little girl also suffered. Her daughter has a learning disability. They put plexiglass around her daughter's desk right away. They didn't do that to Olivia until after we protested. So on March 22nd, Emily and I went for the first time in front of the school board. I have never went to a school board meeting until this day. I was scared. I was literally shaking. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But anyways, we had a local media guy there. video and everything. I was not able to speak at the time in front of the school board because I didn't know you had to be put on the agenda to speak. And at the time, because of COVID, they weren't allowing in-person speaking unless you were on the agenda. I was like, okay. So we were asking him, why not? Why can't we sign up? Why can't we go in? Whatever it may be. He's like, nope, you can't do that. Well, we were talking about our First and Second Amendment, and our superintendent didn't even know what they were. So we outed them. So they didn't like that. So the very next day after our very first protest, the school then retaliated against Olivia. They pulled her out of her classroom, put her in the principal's office, made her eat lunch in there, all the while they are in her classroom, pushing her desk even further into the corner and putting plexiglass around it. From December 7th, when we turned in that medical exemption, until March 23rd, they never once put my little girl behind plexiglass, nor did they after that day. Because I was on the phone and I was ticked. I'm like, Miss Ryan with Northeast Elementary, I asked her, I'm like, why did you just put my little girl behind a plexiglass desk? And she's like, well, we thought that's what we knew that you were going to do. That's what was going to happen if she didn't want to wear her mask. I'm like, she's exempt not to wear a mask or a face shield. She doesn't have to. She's like, well, that's protocol. I'm like, okay, if you're going to make her do this, let me come in and see where you're putting her. And she's like, well, we're kind of hesitant to do that because of COVID. And I'm like, okay, I'll wear a hazmat suit. I don't care. Let me see where you're putting her. She's like, well, we can't really do that. I'm like, okay, can you send me a picture like you did before? This is the picture they sent me before. She's like, no, we don't want to send you a picture because we're afraid you're going to put it on social media. And I told her, I'm like, that's exactly where it's going to go because I'm going to out every one of you for what you're doing to these kids because what you're doing is wrong. And I'm not going to be silenced. So we protested every single school board meeting from then on. And after we went to Tulsa, the week before we went to Tulsa, I was able to speak against the school board without a mask. Was in there, spoke my 3 minutes, and we were fine. Went down to Tulsa. I announced at Tulsa that I was getting an attorney to help me find a legal action what I could take against the school. I went back on April 19th to speak in front of the school board. I walked in there, took my mask off like I did before. They stopped the meeting, and they said, either put your mask on or we'll have you escorted out. I'm like, have me escorted out. I don't care. So I stood my ground, and I was not going to have them win. I was like, I'm not putting my mask on. I am going to stand here and speak my 3 minutes. Well, when I did that, they got up, and they walked out on me. Every last school board member except for the president of the board and the chief of operations walked out. The chief of operations stood there like this, and he's like, put your mask on, put your mask on, put your mask on. And I looked down, I'm like, I got a minute and a half to talk. And I kept talking. And I told them, like, what I did in Tulsa. I told them that I have millions of people behind us because, you guys, we are not the minority. We are not. We are the majority. And this is why we are all here. We are fighting. And if we weren't the minority, then Joe Biden wouldn't be sitting there calling for the FBI to come look at us mama bears. He's scared of what we're coming for because they're after our babies. And if we do not stop them, they're going to keep taking them. And they're going to take them in. They're going to give them the jab. That's what they're going to do. That's what they're trying to do. But we're not going to let that happen. So Emily and I, we ran from there. We said, you know what, after this meeting in Tulsa, we were empowered. We were fired up. We were ready to do something. So on May 17th was the next school board meeting. They walked out on Emily. They did the same thing to Emily. Emily got it on video of them walking out on her, and they took off their mask as they walked out of the room. We got that on video. Of course, we posted it on social media. If you look at iowamamabears.com, it's all on there. So then after that, they wouldn't let Emily and I speak on the school board anymore. They said, no, we ruined their decorum. We're not allowed to speak. I'm like, all right, I got 7 kids here. Let's line them up and start talking. So that's what we did. So 4 of my 7 kids were able to speak in front of the school board. But you know what they did to them? Instead of the school board podium standing right next to the school board members, they pushed them all the way to the corner, out of the camera's range, and put plexiglass around the podium. So they weren't able not only to see their face, but then they were interrogated. But they had this whole intimidation. They were scared walking in there, and they had to wear their mask, of course, because the school board freaked out. But you know what? That wasn't going to stop us. We weren't going to let them win. We're like, you know what? We're going to speak, and we're going to speak what we need to. So we did. And then on May 18th, we had a rally at the Iowa State Capitol. We had 220 people attend, 140 handwritten letters to our governor saying we need to lift these masks. Masks need to be a choice. On May 20th, we got the law passed in the state of Iowa that says all kids K through 12 in public schools had to take masks off. Oh, another thing that we snuck into that bill is that they also had to say the Pledge of Allegiance every single day. So we got that all done in May. Then we had the next rally, the Freedom Over Fear Conference in June, and here in Tampa, which we attended. And to our surprise, General Flynn gave us the first award for the Fearless Fighter for American Values. It was such an honor to receive that award. It was amazing. And here we are today touring around with General Flynn and Miss Olivia. So I wanted to tell you guys, we also started a website called iowamamabears.com. We also started a podcast, which we have Mama Bear Mondays. Every Monday at 8 p.m. Central Time, we put out a new story. And what we have done, we have dedicated our podcast to you, the people, because you guys have been silenced for too long. So if you ever have a story like Olivia's, if you've lost your job because of COVID, anything pandemic of related, related. We want to hear your stories. We want to give you a platform to speak on because you will never be censored on our platform. You have a voice and people need to hear it. They've already tried to take us down twice. Everybody's after us. We even got death threats. And I'm just like, we're just two stay-at-home moms just trying to help people out. But okay, I'd rather die standing than live on my knees. And this is what we're here to fight for, you guys. We're here to fight for our kids. And please help us fight for our kids. There we go. Hold on, I forgot to tell you guys one more thing. I'm also suing the Ankeny School District for what they did to my child.
Like Kimberly said, we did it. We, the people, got this done. It wasn't just her and I. It was by God's grace that we got this done. Nothing is impossible with God. It's not extraordinary people doing extraordinary things. It's an extraordinary God using ordinary people that he may get all the glory. Truly it is. And we are setting the standard for how government should work. It should work of, for, and by the people. When Kimberly and I were able to get this law passed, banning mask mandates in school, it really took collaboration from senators and representatives in Iowa. Heroes of the Heartland is what we call them. They were willing to put it all on the line and take a stand to serve our interests. They went against the teachers' unions and the CDC and Big Pharma, and they listened to us. And they are leaders willing to hold the line. That is the leaders we need. They need to hold the line for us. And they are willing to fight for us, just like Anthony Sabatini and Martin Hyde, who are here, are going to speak to you. That's right. These leaders need to know that we have their backs. It cannot be a political move. It has to be a move of, for, and by the people. That is why everyone needs to get up, get out from behind their keyboards, and get active. We must do it together. The heroes that did this include Jim Carlin, who is actually running against Chuck Grassley. How many of you know who Chuck Grassley is? Hands? Yeah. Chuck's got to go. Chuck's got to go. We got Jim Carlin, who's an incredible man of God, a patriot, a man of integrity, and Chuck's got to get out of there. No more establishment. We are done with it. A couple others are Eddie Andrews, Jeff Shipley, Steve Holt, and Jake Chapman. All of these men not only acted and drafted legislation, but we got it passed the next day. I will never forget the governor. We were in her office at 12:30 in the morning. She'd never signed a bill that early in the morning, she said. But she also said she'd never been so excited to sign a bill. She gave us a high five and she said, "You did this. Your efforts did this." And Kim and I know it's not us. It's people willing to obey the call on their hearts from God to stand up. That's what it is. That's what's going to get it done. So after holding a freedom rally at our Capitol, we were able to get it done. However, we do have a temporary halt to our law. A crooked Bill Clinton appointed judge named Robert Pratt temporarily halted our law, allowing school boards to go along with the teachers' unions. And that Rescue Act money, which we all know it's about money and power, and universal masking is linked directly to the CDC. So they get a big old chunk of money for putting the mask back on our children. But I believe that by God's mighty hand, once again, we are going to soon say we didn't just get the law passed once, but we got it passed twice. And we've only just begun to fight. And in a fight, you have to know your enemy. And we know the enemy, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and the darkness in the heavenlies. So this enemy, as we can see, operates with all deceit. It's evidenced everywhere in the brainwashing that we see. And people are succumbing to it too. But you here today, you are the called. You are the ones with discernment. You see what's going on. And you know that this veil needs to be lifted off the eyes of the people. And with the knowledge that God has given you, you need to act. So this reminds me, in the 1940s, there was an incredible martyr named Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Anyone ever heard of him? Wonderful. He said to us this during the Holocaust. He said, "Silence in the face of evil is evil itself. God will not hold us guiltless." And I hold on to that. And then this hour, I look around and I see 1930s Germany. And there's no way that I can be silent any longer and tell my children I didn't fight for you. So in this hour too, we would be wise to look into history. And part of that history is the Old Testament. I'm reminded of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Anybody know that story? Okay. So those three men were told they must bow down to their dictator, their king. Sounds familiar today, doesn't it? Bow down to the world system. So whenever the music played, they gathered into the center of the town. And whenever it played, they had to bow down. But you know what? Those men said, "No, we will not bow down to you. Our God will deliver us." And they said, "And even if he doesn't deliver us, we still will not bow down to you in your system." So that is what we need to say today. We will only bow to the Lord God Almighty. I truly believe this is our time. Our God will deliver us. We must hold the line. Our real president, right? It's okay. He told us to fight. I learned to fight and to stand up for righteousness' sake. So in honor of 45, he said this: "We will not bend. We will not back down. We will never, ever give up. And we will never, ever surrender."
And we want to remind you guys, go to your school board meetings. It doesn't matter if you have kids in school or not, because you have every right to be there as taxpayers of that county. You can go there, even if you do not speak. Be a listening ear, a watchful eye. If you hear or see something you don't like, please speak up or support somebody that you do. I just want to encourage you guys, because you know what? We have the power and they know it. But if we don't know that we have that power, we can never bring it forward. So we want to encourage each and every one of you. I want to make this a challenge to see how many people we can get at your school board meetings. And please send me your pictures. I will post them all over my website. Thank you. I'm sorry. Dress alike. Get Freedom Over Fear shirts or make them yourself. Please just go, because it makes a difference. Like General Flynn always says, local action has a national impact, and that's exactly what it has done. And Miss Olivia would like to say a couple of things to you.
Thank you, everybody, for helping me take off my mask. And one more thing, fight like a Flynn.
So we want to thank General Flynn. We are so humbled and honored to know him and to learn from him. And we are doing this for our families and our children, but we're doing it for yours too. So this is my daughter, Samara. She's 13. She's one of 4.
And this is my daughter, Michaela. She's 17, and she's one of 7. And Olivia, of course. And my husband's sitting down here on the floor. And without the backing of all our family and friends, we couldn't do this. So thank you, and thank you, everyone, for coming.